What's up, everybody? On a podcast now. I'm Alex. In this video, I'm going to talk about some Injustice 3 leaks. Now, as always, like I say with all these videos, take it with a grain of salt. I wasn't necessarily going to cover this, but it's really making its way around the internet. Even like What Culture, I guess, did a video about it as well. There's some things I believe. There's some things that kind of add up, and we'll talk about all that stuff as it goes forward. Now, I'm going to be having, I think, other videos for the other things, at least some of them, that was also said, because I know a lot of people may say, well, okay, part of the leak was they talked about Batman Arkham, like a brand new Batman game. They talked about Hitman 3. They talked about a Game of the Year edition for Mortal Kombat. And they talked about Injustice 3. So there's other aspects to it. I believe some of them. I don't necessarily believe others, and we'll explain why maybe in their specific videos. For Injustice, from what I've gathered, it doesn't seem like this is going to be announced at this year's E3, okay? And I guess E3 or like their online show, whatever Warner Bros. Ends up doing. If they do it late May, if they do it in June, whatever they do it. We know from Jason Schreier, who I do trust over this leaker, by the way, but we know from him that they were going to reveal a brand new Batman game, the Rocksteady game, the Harry Potter game, and more, right? That's what he said. Now, I guess Hitman 3, that makes sense. Injustice 3, again, they just had leaks from it. There's just information as to what Injustice 3 is. This is not actually going to be announced at this year's thing, which I will say makes sense because the rumor is it would be 2022. Now, that in itself is interesting, right? Because a few weeks ago, we literally had a video, and I predicted, I said, will it come out in 2021? Is that when it's going to happen? You go back all the way to when they basically rebooted Mortal Kombat. They've gone back and forth every 2 years. They've somehow done it where they can have these games come out 2 years. And I said, well, could they continue that? Sure, they absolutely could. Has there been examples of studios that used to do it and then just couldn't anymore? Yeah. In fact, one of them you look to is Naughty Dog, right? Naughty Dog had 2 years in between Uncharted 2 to Uncharted 3. I believe Uncharted 1 to 2 as well. So 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to The Last of Us were all 2 years. But then The Last of Us to Uncharted 4 was 3 years, and then Uncharted 4 to The Last of Us Part 2 was 4 years. So they actually did have a stretch there where you could have said, oh my God, they're cranking these games out every 2 years. Will it ever stop? And you would be, if you would have said, no, you know what? I think eventually it's going to space out. It's going to take longer. You would have been right. So with NetherRealm, they've so far handled it, right? They've handled being able to make a game every other year. I believe it. I think it's possible. It could also be in 2021. But here's the thing. If they're not announcing it this year, at this year's June thing, whatever they end up doing, then yeah, it's not coming out in 2021. And I mean, you can look at it at the reverse too. If it is coming out in 2022, they're not announcing it this soon. While I do believe that Warner Bros. Is going to break tradition and announce games that are further out than what they would normally do, right? We always talk about with Warner Bros. They announce the game and it comes out, right? Like 4 to 6 months later. They've done it with the Batman games, or at least their intention has always been that. They did it with the last Mortal Kombat game. That's what they do with their own studios for these, like mainly these DC games. That's what they do, or even I guess right for NetherRealm as well. But with Harry Potter, even with Rocksteady's game, as I've said, I think they're going to break tradition and announce them now, even though they probably won't come out. Some of them, Rocksteady maybe a year, Harry Potter maybe next fall, 2021's fall. So I think they're going to break tradition, but I don't think they would go so far to announce an Injustice 3 that's 2 full years away. I don't think they would jump the gun and do it that far. So that's the first thing to note, that the leak says it would be 2022. Again, does it sound believable? Definitely. Now, they talked about Injustice 3, final of the trilogy. 2 story modes. Which is cool. First NetherRealm next gen release. Makes sense, right? That's just their next. If they're making that next, which it would go Mortal Kombat, Injustice. And like I've said, what'll be interesting is to see what comes after Injustice. Because if this is the end, then the next game after that would be the next Mortal Kombat game. And then there'd be a brand new game, a different fighting game. Like, what would they do after that? That'll be pretty cool. More customizing option with 5 slots. Some characters include, now I'm going to skip around. I'm going to focus on some cool ones. Huntress, Penguin, Killer Croc. Oh, sign me up. If you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you know how much I love Killer Croc. Dr. Manhattan, and Neo, Keanu Reeves. Weird. Very weird. See, that one is like, that's strange. That's very strange to me because, yeah, I'm not saying that doesn't sound like something they would do. With Mortal Kombat, right? They've added the Terminator. They do all these kind of like pop culture things. I wouldn't doubt that they would do a Neo for it. In fact, Neo sounds more like what you would do for a Mortal Kombat and not in Injustice. But to say that as characters for a game that's not out in 2 years and definitely doesn't sound like a character that's in the, like, are we going to play Injustice 3 and Neo is just going to be a character? Like, does that make any sense? Why? It sounds more like that's a character that is going to be like a guest character, right? That comes like in a DLC pack a few months later. But would that really be something that you're leaking now, right? That's being thrown out there now? That, when I read that part, everything sounds pretty solid to me. Honestly, the Neo, like, it's something I would want. It's something that I need to have now that I know Keanu Reeves could be in one of these games. It's something really cool, but you read it, and honestly, it breaks the reality of what all these other things are saying. Like, it seems like that was kind of just thrown in. You know what I mean? I really don't know any other way of explaining it. It just sounds to me like that's a DLC additional, like a guest character, not one that would be part of a base game. And if it's a DLC character, why are you talking about it now? But maybe they just know that. Like, maybe that's just what their insiders have told them. Like, hey, you're going to have all these characters, including him, but they know on the side that that's going to be, you know, it's a whole thing. I really, it's something that does break the rest of these things from me saying, you know what, they all sound perfectly plausible. The Neo one doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. To me, again, you could have different opinion. Tournament mode also coming similar to Mortal Kombat 11's. It's called Infinite Crisis. Villain of the game is Necron. Release window eyed for 2022. And again, this is something that I probably wouldn't have covered normally, but What Culture picked this up, and they made a video about it, I guess, along with Batman, and that's got, like, the internet a little crazy, a little stir-crazy. It's exciting. It honestly is exciting. I'm glad that I picked a week and a half ago to start talking about Injustice 3, because it seems like it's right around the corner. Again, what's very odd about this is I do believe a lot of those leaks. I do. I don't think they sound all that crazy, except for the Neo one. But what's weird about the situation is, like, that's not even one of the games being announced. In fact, what is a little odd, to kind of take this one step further and kind of pull it out of just the Injustice, I did, warn that I was going to cover the other videos. I'm going to make a Batman one that may have already been out by the time you guys are watching this. Maybe it'll come out like the next day or, the next video of the day. But there were things for Batman and for other things that definitely add to, well, you're either going to believe it or you're not. For example, he said there's a Hitman 3. Now, is that possible? Yeah, it's definitely possible. Hitman 2 did not sell very well at all. At all. Now, I do think they will want to end the trilogy and this rebooted trilogy. So I do think that's coming. They talked about in Batman that Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker are going to reprise their role, but that it's going to be a soft reboot, and it's going to be the biggest open world Gotham that we've had, and a lot of recycled stuff from past things, almost as if they took it from past things, which, again, with these leaks, you have to be very, very careful with, right? So could, and you follow that and you say, okay, well, the Troy Baker, Roger Craig Smith thing, that's pretty interesting, right? But if he's wrong, if those things are wrong, that makes Injustice wrong. And again, what's weird about it is you're going into May, we're going into June, and Warner Bros. Is gonna, I said this in a live stream recently, no matter what, if it's in the IGN Summer of Play, if it's in Warner Bros.' own, thing that they do online, they were planning on going to E3 and announcing big games, right? Per Jason Schreier. They're still going to do that. It's not like because it's not there, suddenly they're just not going to announce Batman, ever. It's just never going to come out. No, they're obviously going to do it. But again, what's weird to me is you have Batman, you have Rocksteady's game, you have the Harry Potter game. Already, that is enormous. That's a lot of games. In fact, one of them is enough, let alone three, and let alone three of those size, okay? Now you go, and, okay, is there that Superman game? Is that actually real? Because you'd have to probably talk about that. Is that real? Hitman 3, that's a new one. Are we just going to throw that in there with all the other games that are definitely going to be more popular and take the spotlight away from it? I don't know. Would you really want to put Hitman in the same collection of games as Batman, a Rocksteady Justice League or Suicide Squad, and a Harry Potter open world RPG? Don't you think Hitman is going to kind of be left behind? Yeah, it probably will. Monolith, the studio that made the two Middle-earth games, are they going to be there? Are they going to have a new game? Does that game get the spotlight stolen from them again because of all the other games? So you have all these things, and then there's a Mortal Kombat, 11, a brand new Game of the Year edition, and all this additional stuff, and it's like, they're all of a sudden, like, this is becoming a massive, massive thing. And then Injustice wouldn't even be there because, again, it would be too early, and they said, like, it's not actually going to be shown at the whatever they're going to do. So why have these leaks about it? And again, the Neo thing is a really big, like, red flag for me that I don't necessarily know why that's thrown in there. I like to give leaks the benefit of the doubt. I also try to call them out for what they are whenever I possibly can. I want to believe the leaks for Injustice, and I think that they could very well be real. At the same time, it's not impossible to think that this person just came up with all this stuff. I mean, it's not too revolutionary to think they just came up basically with a bunch of characters that would be plausible for a new game. They came up with a villain, and they said that there would be 2 stories and that there would be a tournament mode. That's pretty much what they said, and it would be a year after most people probably would have thought, right? A lot of people may have said 2021. They said 2022. Maybe that makes them different, right? Or they feel different. So, you know, you ultimately have to decide for yourself. That's what all these leak videos always are. I try to tell you guys what we know from like the stories. I try and give you guys my perspective and how I kind of read into them. And then ultimately, it's up to you guys to decide if you believe them or not. So let me know in the comments below, guys. What do you think? Do you think this is true? With that being said, again, no matter what, we won't be seeing it this June, so we're still going to have to wait quite a while. But do you think this is like the first stuff for Injustice 3? Let me know. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, Podcast Now. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll be making more Injustice videos over the coming weeks, months, and what seems to be years now. And so I will see you guys all in those videos, okay? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you there.